Karen thought I was running some shady operation just because I opened my garage. One phone call later, I had cops at my door, my name on the mayor's desk, and a choice to make: stay quiet, or remind her exactly who she was messing with. Hey everyone, I'm your host, and today's story is wild. What started as a simple day in my garage turned into a neighborhood scandal involving cops, city officials, and one very entitled Karen. Stick around, because the twist halfway through changes everything. And by the end, there's a lesson in pride, power, and knowing when to back down. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from. It was a quiet Sunday morning. The kind where you brew some coffee, step outside, and enjoy a little peace before the week starts. I had just pulled into my driveway after a night shift. Being the local fire chief meant I was used to long hours and emergencies. But what I wasn't used to was Karen. I hit the button on my remote and opened my garage. Nothing crazy. Just needed to grab some tools and clean out old equipment from my side gig, refurbishing vintage fire equipment for charity auctions. Everything was legal, safe, and cleared by the department. No sirens, no open flames, nothing out of the ordinary. That's when I heard the unmistakable sound of judgmental footsteps. Karen, my neighbor 3 doors down, came marching across the street, arms crossed, eyes locked onto my garage like she just discovered a secret bunker. "You can't just open that garage whenever you want," she snapped. I blinked, a little stunned. It's my garage. On my property." She squinted, scanning the inside. "I've seen you unloading strange tanks and metal things in there. I think you're running something dangerous." It was absurd. The tanks were oxygen training canisters, completely empty and used for educational displays at school events. I explained as calmly as I could, but Karen wasn't listening. Her mind was made up. "You're storing hazardous materials in a residential neighborhood. That's a code violation. I'm calling the police." And she did. Right there. Pulled out her phone, dialed 911, and told dispatch that there was suspicious activity involving tanks and industrial gear in her neighborhood. I stood there, half amused, half infuriated, as 2 patrol cars pulled up in front of my driveway 10 minutes later. One officer stepped out, gave me a puzzled look, and then smiled when he recognized me. "Chief? We got a call." "Yeah," I said, pointing at Karen, who was now recording everything with her phone like she was catching some criminal in the act. They checked everything. Walked through the garage. Asked a few routine questions. Then one of the officers said, loud enough for her to hear, "There's absolutely nothing illegal here. If anything, it's one of the cleanest garages I've seen in this job." Karen wasn't happy. She muttered something about favoritism and cover-ups before storming off back to her house. Now, at this point, I thought it was over. Just another overreaction from a woman who treated the HOA handbook like the Constitution. But oh no, this was just the beginning. Because while I was trying to brush it off and get back to my day, Karen was already drafting the next move in her little crusade against me. And I had no idea how far she'd take it, or that she'd try to drag the mayor into it next. After the whole garage incident, I did my best to let it go. I didn't want to be that guy who turned a neighborhood squabble into a war. I figured Karen was just having a bad day, maybe needed to feel in control of something. I gave her the benefit of the doubt. Big mistake. A few days later, I got an email, official letterhead, straight from City Hall. It was a formal inquiry about my use of public property and fire department equipment for private gain. The kicker? It was CC'd to the mayor. I reread the message 3 times. I wasn't using anything improperly. I'd logged every item I brought home, followed the exact policy protocols, and had the paperwork to prove it. Still, the fact that the complaint made it this far meant someone had pushed it hard. And I knew exactly who that someone was. Karen had taken her garage crusade straight to the top. I sat at my desk, fingers drumming the wood. My chest felt tight, not with fear, but with disappointment. I'd dedicated years to this community. Pulled people out of burning houses. trained rookie firefighters, spent weekends educating kids on fire safety. And now I was being treated like a criminal, because someone didn't like seeing a few metal cylinders in my garage? I went to the next city council meeting to defend myself. Of course, Karen was there too, sitting in the front row with a binder full of printed photos, shots of my garage, images of equipment, and highlighted pages from the HOA rules. She even had a tab labeled, "Possible Chemical Storage." When it was my turn to speak, I stood up calmly. "I'm happy to address any concerns," I began. "But I'd like to remind everyone that I'm fully certified, operating within safety guidelines, and everything in that garage is documented and accounted for." There was a beat of silence. Then the mayor leaned forward. "Chief, you've served this city with integrity for years. We know your record. But due to the nature of the complaint, we are required to investigate." Karen smiled, smug, satisfied. To her, this wasn't about safety. It was about power. For the next week, I was under internal review. Inspectors came to my home, my station, even checked my storage lockers. I cooperated completely. And guess what? They found nothing. 0 violations. The report came back spotless. But by then, the damage was done. Rumors had spread. Some neighbors started whispering. One even asked me if I was running some kind of black market fire supply thing. I laughed it off, but deep down, I was livid. I'd stayed respectful. I'd followed every rule. And Karen had nearly cost me my job, just because she didn't like seeing my garage open. That's when I realized she wasn't going to stop. Not unless I made her. But I wasn't going to stoop to her level. I had something better in mind. Something legal. Something loud. And something she'd never forget. By this point, Karen had pushed every button I had. She'd humiliated me in public, dragged my name through the mud, and tried to get me fired, all because I opened my own garage. But I wasn't going to retaliate with petty revenge. No shouting matches. No lawsuits. No HOA drama. Instead, I decided to hit her with something she couldn't argue against, a full-on fire code compliance inspection. See, what Karen didn't know is that being the fire chief comes with certain responsibilities, and one of them is overseeing periodic fire safety checks in residential zones. I never abused that power, not once. But this time, I made sure her block, including her home, was added to the next round of surprise inspections. And when my team rolled up, Karen was completely caught off guard. We showed up in uniform, clipboard in hand. I stayed back, let my deputy take the lead. This wasn't personal. It was official business. Within 10 minutes, they found the first violation, an overstuffed garage packed with flammable holiday decorations, stored next to a faulty breaker box. Then came the backyard, where Karen had installed a propane fire pit under a low-hanging awning. And don't get me started on the extension cord she daisy-chained through her patio. My deputy documented everything, calmly informed her of the violations, and handed over a warning notice. Karen was red-faced and flustered, trying to argue her way out of it. "This is harassment," she snapped. "You're only here because I filed that complaint." But we had body cams. Paperwork. A full trail showing this was part of a regularly scheduled round. Nothing she could fight, because unlike her, we had the truth on our side. What made it even sweeter? We found out Karen was technically in violation of 3 separate HOA fire safety codes, the same handbook she'd thrown at me just days earlier. And here's where it gets interesting. The HOA board, once tight-lipped, suddenly realized that siding with Karen could open them up to liability. They called an emergency meeting. And just like that, Karen's concerns were dropped. The formal complaint against me? Cleared. Public apology? Never happened, but she did stop showing up at city council meetings. Funny how fast things change when you shine a little light on the rulebook. Now, I didn't do any of this to win. That's not how I operate. But I did need to send a message. Respect works both ways. And the lesson? Don't assume the worst about someone just because you don't understand what they're doing. Karen acted out of fear, control, and pride, and it nearly cost both of us a lot more than reputation. But the moment that stuck with me most? When a kid from down the street knocked on my door later that week. "My mom said you're the guy who saves people from fires," he said. "That's pretty cool." Yeah. That's what matters. Not garage doors. Not drama. Just doing the job right, and letting the truth speak louder than Karen ever could.